Hey, this is Lamont from 10 Shekel Shirt, and I'm also the co-founder of an abolitionist organization called Love 146. We work to combat child sex trafficking and exploitation, and we work to restore survivors of this horrible crime. People wonder what human trafficking is. I like to just simply explain it in these terms, that it's the pathway into modern day slavery. People are trafficked when there's a transaction of buying and selling of a human being. And according to the U.S. State Department, the illegal sale of human beings has surpassed the illegal sale of arms, and will pass the illegal sale of drugs within the next 10 years. There's so much money being made right now. What's crazy about that is a human being, for example, can be used over and over again, and so the markup is so high where when someone uses a drug, it's used and then gone. Another myth is that it's all over there and it doesn't really affect my life here. It's not, close to home. And, we have had calls from agencies. Our offices are here in New Haven, Connecticut, and we've had calls from agencies here in Connecticut asking us to care for girls as young as 12 years old. I also just had a conversation with a rescue agency who rescued a Russian teenager out of a brothel here in Connecticut. And once the girl was gone and left, the criminal gang that trafficked her in Russia in the first place killed her little brother. And so these are the kinds of people that we're involved with. And it's important to note that sex trafficking is not the only form of slavery in our world today. They estimate that 3% of all chocolate actually comes from cocoa beans that were harvested by slaves, mostly child slaves. Also, 3% of the rug industry is made by slaves. And so even though slavery was abolished, over 100 years ago in this nation and elsewhere, modern day slavery in many forms is still alive and well. I spent a week or so with a girl around my age who spent 10 years in slavery for borrowing $10 in South Asia. She had a child that was sick. She couldn't afford the medicine, so she went to a money lender and borrowed $10 and spent 10 years in prison. In the mid to late 90s, I started to hear these awful reports about children being trafficked into sexual exploitation. And the more I learned about it, the more I felt like I had to do something about it. I had to do my part. And so I started to learn as much as I could. Then I started to link up with existing organizations and begin to speak on behalf of the voiceless. And that was my first sort of stage of the journey. From about 2000 to 2002, I started speaking on behalf of a rescue agency, and they told me that there was not enough places to put the children once they were rescued. And I know it's hard for people to imagine modern day slavery and what it looks like, and I know it's difficult to listen to and talk about child sex slavery and what all that means. But it's a reality in our day, and these children, some as young as 5-6 years old, were locked up in these places and pimped out to as many as 50 and 20 customers a day. And it's just a horrendous crime and tragedy in our world. And so I gathered some friends and some people that were a little bit more experienced with me in different human rights work, and we went to Southeast Asia to find out how we could improve on the aftercare for exploited children. By aftercare, I mean safe homes and caregivers, trauma counselors, that kind of thing. And so we went to Southeast Asia, first initially with some undercover investigators, and what I saw there just wrecked me and still shatters me, and I still hate talking about it. But we went into a brothel that on the outside and even in the lobby seemed like a nice hotel. And you know, if you looked in through the glass at first, you wouldn't even know it was a brothel. So when we walked into the back room, we saw children about the ages of 9 to 14 sitting behind glass, all in matching red dresses, with numbers pinned to their dress. And on our side of the glass was predators and pedophiles from many countries around the world, and many nationalities. And it just was so sickening. On this side, people were free and they were purchasing organs on the other side of the glass, and these children were just sitting there watching children's cartoons. Some of them looked terribly frightened. Some of them were just glazed over, almost as if there was no life left. And one of them, I remember, still had some fight left in her eyes, and her number was 146. After we went into the brothel with the undercover investigators, we learned a lot about the rescue process and how difficult it is not just to rescue the children, but to make sure that their pimps and the brothel managers and those who traffic them are prosecuted as well. And so it's a big, long process. It's not like you can just go and start yanking kids out. And so one of the main problems in the human rights world regarding these children is there's nowhere to put them. People have done raids. Some of them would end up in safe homes and aftercare facilities with good people. Many would end up being re-trafficked out in the street, or many of them were even thrown in jail. And so with some good friends, we decided to co-found the organization Love 146. People ask me, how they can get involved when they hear about issues of injustice, specifically, child slavery and sexual exploitation. And what I would say to them would be, and this is what I've done in my life, and it's learn as much as you can. There's fantastic websites and organizations and research out there so that you don't have to reinvent the wheel. Learn as much as you can, and then join something. You can join a national group, maybe even a local, regional group in your area. I started something at my house, a little justice study, and we met once a week and just studied and talked and learned together about the issues of modern day slavery. And the third thing that I would recommend to people who want to get involved is to act. And they can act by giving money, they can act by pursuing a career in law enforcement to help bust these criminal gangs that are both near and far. They can pursue a career in child psychology, trauma counseling. They can become a lawyer on behalf of the oppressed rather than just working for a big corporation. Lawyers are incredibly valuable people in the fight for emancipation and freedom of modern day slaves. People can also use their existing vocations or voice. That's where the word vocation comes from, is voice. I happen to be a musician, and so many of my songs are about abolition, restoration of these child slaves, and I speak about it all over the country. And it's not just all guilt trip and a big heavy. To be honest with you, it is incredibly exciting to be a part of the new abolition movement in our day. It's a shame that there needs to be a new abolition movement in our day, and that there's so many children being enslaved and exploited in our world today. The reality is, it's very encouraging to see children learn to smile again and learn to walk.